Cringing already. Reverend Cathy, I remember when you first came and joined us here in the ministry to assist Tag, and then with Tag's sad demise, Reverend Cathy took over and led us into a place that I think this church, this organization, is in the best shape and health that it's ever been, and I thank you for that. And I know our board meetings are always all the better thanks to you. So I want to introduce our speaker for today, Reverend Cathy Huff. Please, thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. I love you guys. Thank you, Sandy, for your creative thought. Thank you, ministers, for sharing your beautiful music. Thank you, media team, for all you do to make sure we are doing a good job. So as Sandy said, our theme for this month is the soul's call. And our CSL Global Vision contains this statement: we envision humanity awakening to its spiritual magnificence and discovering the creative power of thought. A world where every person discovers his or her own personal power and their own ability to create an individual life that works within a world that works for everyone. So the discovery of our own personal power is the soul's call, and it beckons us through our spiritual practice and through our alignment with the one power and presence we call God. Carl Jung said, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens." So the soul's call is this deeply intimate, challenging, exponentially powerful, and globally beneficial work we're invited to do every day. And it's globally beneficial because when any of us awakens, we carry everybody else along with us. It affects and evolves our global consciousness. In our teaching of the science of mind, the word soul is used in two different ways. So I want to clarify. So one definition sees soul as the impersonal spiritual law that governs our creation. And it governs our creation by faithfully carrying out the creative instructions we give it through our thoughts and beliefs and directing our predominant thought into form. So in this symbolic V that explains how the science of mind works, the soul is in the middle. That's the creative law. That's the receptive, impersonal law that receives our thoughts and acts upon them, whether or not they're conscious or unconscious. So that's the generalized belief of soul. So up above, it's the seed we're planting into the soil to produce the plant. Seed, soil, plant, spirit, soul, body, or form. So that's one way. But that's not the way we are defining soul today. We're defining it in the way that most people generally think of soul. And that's the more personal definition as the spiritual, eternal part of us, and that which exists beyond our body, existed before we came here, exists after we leave here, that which gives us our identity and our purpose as unique, individualized expressions of the One. Now, David Brooks is the author of Second Mountain, and he says this: experiencing the call is that purifying moment when you know why you were put on this earth and you are ruthless about pursuing this mission. Now, some of us experience this purifying moment early on, and our gifts and our talents are apparent from the get-go. So it's kind of like the path to pursuing our mission is kind of like shooting an arrow. It's straight and it's sure, boom, and it hits the target from point A to point B, and it seems to do that with seemingly effortless ease. That's some of us. And then there's the rest of us. The rest of us, where the path is a bit more crooked, and there's some stops and some starts and some twists and some turns. And these twists and turns are often perceived as painful experiences, and they're often punctuated by doubt and by fear. But they are also taking us where we need to go, into that place of growth, into that place of coming into who we came here to be. In Living Without Fear, Dr. Holmes, who's our founder, writes, "There is this question, however, that naturally arises. Why all the suffering, sorrow, and pain? Why has tragedy accompanied this journey of man?" He says, again, our imagination may answer this question in a somewhat plausible manner. He says, there is no other way through which true individuality can evolve. Man must be let alone to find his own way to discover him or herself, or else be compelled arbitrarily to follow only one road, in which case he or she would be an automaton, not an individual. The Reverend Michael Beckwith has a succinct way of referring to these twists and turns of life. He says, "We are pushed by pain until we are pulled by vision." And as Sandy also said, pushed by pain is our topic for this week. Being pushed by pain is often the way we roll, until we come to that place of believing in our vision so strongly that we are able to steer the course with the power of our faith. Sometimes, as we well know, change only occurs when the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain that we'll feel when we are required to make a change. Friar Ilia Delio writes about evolution in the book The Hours of the Universe, Reflections on God, Science, and the Human Journey. That's a mouthful. But the words are, "We have not accepted evolution as our story. We treat evolution as a conversational theory or something that belongs to science, as if science is something separate from us and outside of our range of experience. Evolution means simply that change is integral to life, as we engage in the process of becoming something that is not yet known. To live in evolution is to let go of structures that prevent convergence and deepening of consciousness, and to assume new structures that are consonant with creativity, inspiration, and development. So evolution requires trust in the process of life itself. There's a power in the heart of life that is divine and lovable. In a sense, we're challenged to lean into life's changing patterns and attend to the new patterns that are emerging in our midst. To live in openness to the future is to live with a sense of creativity and participation, and to use our gifts for the sake of the whole by sharing them with others. So evolution is necessary, and evolution often involves pain, both on an individual and a collective level. Lao Tzu wisely reminded us that new beginnings are often disguised as painful endings. And new beginnings often take much more time than any of us would like. This month brings us two powerful examples of painful, plodding evolution, but evolution nevertheless. The first is June 1st, which marked the 100th anniversary of the massacre in Tulsa, Oklahoma, that took place on June 1st, 1921. Now, I'm assuming that all of you know about this event, this terrible stain on our past that occurred when a white mob killed hundreds of affluent black residences and literally burned their community, their neighborhood to the ground. But I also wonder how many of you were not aware until very recently that this event had taken place. Because this being aware has been fueled by collective consciousness moving ahead, and fueled by the many, unfortunately, more tragic examples of violence offenses toward people of color. Nevertheless, it has moved to a place of critical mass, where now it's on the news, where now there's specials, where now for once we have a president that has the courage enough to address this atrocity and urge us to move forward with healing. Oh, that's great. So in our mortal year, 100 years is a very long time. Yet in the world of the eternal, it is but a blink in the eye of history. It took 100 years to reach a point where this horrendous event is now widely acknowledged. This is evolution, slow and painful, but evolution nevertheless. And another example this month is we can see this same painfully slow evolution, which resulted, thank God, in the legalization of gay marriage and the celebration of Pride Month, which honors our LGBTQ, and yes, I know there's more letters and numbers. I'm committed to learning them, but I don't now. But I do know LGBTQ, and I'm so proud that we are honoring this as a part of our family, our human family. And I think if we don't acknowledge progress, no matter how minimal or small it seems, then we're snuffing out our belief in the power of change through the power of the people, through changing beliefs, one thought at a time. Episcopal priest Walter Brownridge recently wrote this. He wrote, when Martin Luther King said the arc of the moral universe bends toward justice, he was diving deep into his desire for a new day. We are all called to live this new day. Maya Angelou said, if we learn from history, we don't have to relive the mistakes that were made. If we face our history honestly, openly, and lovingly, a new day can be born. So these two examples are examples of evolutionary processes that have been pushed by pain. And what holds true for historical movements holds true for each of us as individuals as well, right now, in this now moment. Pain pushes until vision pulls. So suppose we chose not to avoid or deny pain when it shows up, but rather we embraced it as an invitation to higher consciousness, deeper love, and the opportunity to evolve toward greater purpose and greater action in our own lives. Sometimes people who are new to this teaching think that we're never supposed to admit to feeling pain, or we're never supposed to experience sadness, that it's all good, and it is all good, but sometimes it's not all comfortable. And often it's the pain and the sadness that is what points us in the right direction, gets us on track. I've shared many times before that I was at a very low point when I was introduced to this teaching, and it became real to me and actually recalibrated the direction in life that I was taking. I used to say that I crawled into my first New Thought church on my belly, but that wasn't quite accurate. I did manage to walk in on my own 2 feet unassisted, but inside my steps were wobbly and my voice was faltering. I was at a low point, and I was looking for a lifeline. And it came to me, it was almost like that eerie voice that comes on from our car GPS, you know, when you make the wrong turn and the voice comes on and says, recalculating, and you're like, oh. But it's a valuable voice, and the voice that I heard at that time was valuable, telling me I had some serious recalculating to do to allow myself to come to a place of belief that the pain I experience has good embedded in it. And that's the truth. It always does. We've all learned that phrase, what we resist persists. And this is certainly true for any pain, whether it be physical or psychological or spiritual or existential pain that we might be feeling. In the glossary of the Science of Mind text, Dr. Holmes defines non-resistance in this way. He says, fighting any adverse condition only increases its power over us because we're making a reality out of it. Someone has said that the language of resistance is pain. But non-resistance finds the harmony of the universe and swings into its motion, going with the stream of power which nourishes and protects. I love that. Resistance is the offspring of fear and ignorance. Non-resistance is the offspring of love. He did not say that pain is an illusion. His words are, I believe that everything is as real as it's supposed to be. If a person hurts, he hurts. There's no denying it. And he also said, we must transcend the appearance, even though we admit it as a fact. So yes, we have the fact of this pain that we're experiencing. We acknowledge it, but we have the ability to move through it, to release it, to transcend it. Here's a story about transcending pain. So this woman and her husband were late. They were on their way to catch their cruise ship. They're on their way to port, and they are in a hurry. And the husband has I'm going to mess up this joke. I just messed it up. Cancel clear. You didn't hear that. All right, recalculating. Okay, so they stop by the dentist, and the woman tells the dentist, I want a tooth pulled. I want a tooth pulled, and we are in a big hurry. I don't want any Novocaine because we're in a huge hurry. Just extract the tooth as soon as possible, and we'll be on our way. Well, the dentist naturally was pretty impressed, and he said, you're certainly a courageous woman. Which tooth is it? At which point she smiled and looked at her husband and said, show him your teeth, dear. Okay, she is a master of transcending appearance, which, by the way, is so much easier to do when it's somebody else's pain we're transcending. Isn't it? We're easy. We're able to sit with people. We're able to listen deeply. We're able to take on their pain. We're able to help them release it. But when it's ours, it's really harder and a difficult story. So Sandy shared some ways that she moves herself out of feeling that pain. But you know what? Sometimes we just need to think of our personal pain as the perfect fertilizer. Sort of ironic, I know. But our lives go through seasons just like a garden. Pain is like the fertilizer we might use to prepare the grass or the flowers or the trees to grow, because that fertilizer provides the essential ingredients required to grow a strong, healthy plant. Our pain then often is an essential ingredient required for our development. It provides that. It's often a sure guide to what we may need to release or enhance or substitute in order to stay in that beautiful creative flow where we're creating the lives that we dream of, the lives that we desire. So maybe we can start to entertain the idea that our pain is preparing the soil of our lives to nourish our deepest soul purpose. Maybe we can choose, as that wise sage Oprah Winfrey says, to turn our wounds into wisdom. The idea of incorporating bereavement counseling into my ministry would have never come forth without my experience of deeply grieving my mother's death. That's what steered me on that path that got me to realizing what a beautiful, beautiful calling bereavement counseling was for me. What a blessing it proved to be in my life. And how often do we use the words grief and blessing in the same sentence? Could it be that they are two sides of the same coin? What a concept, right? But it's this concept that helps us to remember that God is always present and gently, and sometimes not so gently, pushing us toward our highest and best good, even and sometimes especially in the midst of our most difficult circumstances. And in grieving, acknowledging, honoring that grief we feel, letting it come forward, feeling it, and then releasing it. In doing that, in grieving all that we have deemed to be lost, we're opening up and creating a space for the new insight and direction that's coming our way. Helen Keller is quoted as saying, although the world is full of suffering, it is also full of the overcoming of suffering. Our pain is not punishment for our perceived sins, no matter what you were told when you were a kid, no matter what you were told about Santa Claus. No, our pain is not punishment for our perceived sins. To feel pain does not mean that we've done something wrong. It does not mean that we're flunking out of religious science and science of mind. Okay. What if, instead of viewing our pain as punishment or as proof that we're not good religious scientists, what if we understood that the pain has arisen because we've set a clear intention or we've identified a deep desire to change something or attract something in our lives? You might be saying, huh? Right now? You might be saying that. But what if anything not in alignment with your best and highest good comes forward to be released, replaced, and reintegrated into higher knowledge or clearer guidance? Maybe the pain is helping you to move away from something that does not fit with your deepest desires. Or maybe it's pushing you toward what you truly desire to be, to do, or to have by helping you to release what no longer serves you. Maybe it's helping you to let go of barriers to living your best life. Michael Singer, who's the author of The Untethered Soul, suggests one of the essential requirements for true spiritual growth and deep personal transformation is coming to peace with pain. No expansion or evolution can take place without change, and periods of change are not always comfortable. Change involves challenging what is familiar to us, daring to question our traditional needs for safety, comfort, and control. This is often perceived as a painful experience. You know, we can choose to acknowledge our pain while at the same time strengthening our spiritual practice and moving into a place where we sense and know God's presence. A place where we're able to feel God's companioning us even in the midst of trying times. We can hold in our hearts the words and the truth of Dr. Holmes, who says, "We have within us a power that can overcome every obstacle in our experience and set us safe, satisfied, and at peace, healed and prosperous in a new light and a new life." We know that principle is not bound by precedent. This means that no matter how deep and how vast the history of our pain is, it can be transformed in a holy instant into a catalyst for passionate, productive, and pleasurable lives. When we acknowledge our pain as the first step in releasing it, we can let it be our pathway to evolution, knowing that each step that we take towards God is a step away from separation, and our journey through pain is leading us to the joy of living the soul's call. I was recently really impressed by the tennis star Naomi Osaka's decision to pull out of the French Open. Now, I do not follow sports, but this came on NPR and it caught my attention. I was like, wow. She pulled out. She pulled out of the French Open rather than participate in the mandatory media conferences following each match. And she cited openly mental health reasons and said she had been experiencing anxiety and depression. Some people might conclude that she was a quitter, that she couldn't stand the heat. But many others realized that her act was one of tremendous courage, because by choosing to be vulnerable and by acknowledging her personal pain, she's been instrumental in shining a vital light on mental health issues in the sports world and beyond. And this one decision that she made will ripple out and will help countless others, I guarantee it. This is evolution. This is the soul's call. This is answering the soul's call. Practitioner Tracy Brown says, pain can be your motivation for a breakdown, a breakup, or a breakthrough. Which do you choose? I know that Naomi Osaka chose a breakthrough by facing her pain and moving through it to a place of greater strength and awareness. And this is a choice that each of us gets to make every time that pain comes a-callin'. Rumi gave us wise counsel. He said, these pains you feel are messengers. Listen to them. Dr. Holmes tells us that every problem is primarily mental, and the answer to our problems will be found in spiritual realizations. And we come to these necessary evolutionary spiritual realizations each time we stop. You heard Sandy say it, stop. We stop and we turn to what Dr. Holmes calls the friend within. I like that name. He's referring to that high counselor, that eternal guide, and that creative intelligence that is all-knowing, pervasive, immortal, lives within us and acts through and as us. American filmmaker Karen Kusama said, I get why we don't want to be in pain, but there's something very essential about what happens when we're in pain and some of the growth that comes from it if we stare it straight in the face. And C.S. Lewis said, pain insists upon being attended to. God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks in our consciences, but shouts in our pain. It is Spirit's megaphone to rouse a deaf world. None of us enjoys painful experiences, but instead of avoiding pain, ignoring pain, or pretending it doesn't exist, we can accept it and call upon God to lovingly walk us through it to the wisdom that awaits us on the other side. We can know that beyond the pain lies freedom and an understanding, these are the words of Ram Dass, that as we play the edge of our pain, gently opening, acknowledging, and allowing, the suffering that it causes diminishes. If we further dissolve the boundaries, letting ourselves enter into the pain and the pain enter into us, we can see the possibility of going beyond it to where the heart is freer. We've never been so vulnerable, so defenseless, and yet somehow so safe. The surrender we were frightened of turns out to be not defeat, but a kind of victory. We all know countless examples like this, like Abraham Lincoln suffered from severe depression, and Franklin D. Roosevelt lost the use of his legs to polio before becoming president. And Helen Keller became deaf and blind when she was 18 months old. And Benjamin Franklin couldn't afford to attend school and dropped out at age 10. Winston Churchill had emotional instability. Walt Disney had attention deficit disorder. We could go on and on and on, naming endless examples of people who have pushed through their personal pain, daunting diagnoses, and challenging conditions to achieve greatness and to leave lasting gifts for the world. Now, we may never achieve fame, but our individual greatness lies in our willingness to forge ahead, pushing through our pain to answer the soul's call. So I want to close with the words of Coretta Scott King, who said this so beautifully. She said, "My story is a freedom song from within my soul. My story is a freedom song from within my soul. It is a guide to discovery, a vision of how even the worst pain and heartaches can be channeled into human monuments, impenetrable and everlasting." And so it is. Thank you.
Cathy, you just keep getting better. Wow, wow. Sorry.